Hello, Camilla Constance here. Video today to explain to you how, but also why, you need to be talking to your kids about sex. So I'm going to kick off with the why. I'm asked by so many parents, how do I do this? Why should I be doing this? Help me please, Camilla. And I want to stress how if we're not having these conversations with our kids, you have to understand that no one is. There is no sex education in schools these days. The little that there is very, very focused on avoiding pregnancies and STIs possibly, although the emphasis is all about educating girls to say no and to avoid pregnancies, as if that's the only thing that's anything to do with sex. Now, if you want your young people to go out into the world as sexually confident, safe, kind, loving adults, you're going to have some conversations which you might initially find difficult, which is why I've created these videos to help you, right? So, first of all, if you're not having these conversations, your children are going to be learning about sex from essentially two places. They're going to be learning about it from online porn. And when you don't answer their questions, they are going to take these questions to the internet. They're learning at a very, very young age that when they have a question that mummy and daddy can't answer, they go and Google it. So what kind of answers do you think they're going to get? Do you want to be in control of those answers? Do you want to be in control of the message? Do you want to have some role in the kind of message they're receiving? I think you do, because this is a huge part of life. Sexual energy is incredibly powerful, and we're all going to grow into it. We're all going to experience it. And if you give them some parameters, if you give them some guidelines, if you give them some ideas about how to use and master and enjoy sexual energy in healthy, beautiful, loving ways, they're going to be adults who are happier, but also so much nicer. And they're not going to they'll be in a better place not to be harmed or to do harm, both of which is a concern to us, right? When we step away from this role of educating our kids and raising our kids in this really important part of their lives, we are essentially, as I said, expecting someone else to do it. Schools aren't doing it. Porn is doing it in not very nice ways. The playground, the banter, the stories, the rumours, they get so much misinformation from the playground. Let me give you an example. My daughter, who's in her teen years, told me the other day that girls her age, so they're becoming sexually curious, they're just beginning to become sexually active, they expect sex to be painful. They expect penetrative sex with a boy to be a painful experience. So my question was, well, what are they doing it for? They're doing it to be cool, mum. They're doing it to belong. They're doing it to fit in with the gang. So we might be really shocked that our girls are having sex that they're not enjoying in order to fit in. But how will they know that it's anything different unless we've told them different? Like in that silence, when we are silent and we don't step into that arena and have these conversations with them, there's a vacuum, there's a void, and it's filled with information from other people. And often that information is really unhelpful and sometimes it's downright harmful. Like, I do not want my daughter ever having sex that is painful. I want her to only ever enjoy sex that is deeply pleasurable. So it's my role to teach her about it, and it's my role to tell her how to do that. So when should we start having these conversations? Well, my belief as a parent, an ex-teacher, primary school teacher, and as now a sex coach, is that you can't actually start soon enough. Like if you leave talking about sex with your kids until they are ready, they are the appropriate age, maybe, I don't know, what is it, 16. Like you think because sex is now legal that this is the right time to talk to them. If you are waiting to talk about sex till they're 16, you are way, way, way too late. The years of guff and nonsense and lies and myths and downright bullshit they've absorbed by then, you're not going to be listened to. Plus it's going to be super embarrassing, because if you go from having had none of these conversations to suddenly launching into the birds and the bees at age 16, it's going to be super awkward for you, it's going to be super awkward for them, and it's going to go nowhere. So my invitation to you is to start as early as possible. Ideally, you respond to questions that they ask. So I was very lucky because I was pregnant with my third child when my other two were toddlers and still in the bath together. And the question came up at bath time, how did the baby get into your tummy? And I was able to explain to them. And I guess because I was a teacher and I'd done sex ed as a teacher at schools back in the days when sex ed existed in schools, I kind of had a fairly confident base of my knowledge, but I was also able to say to them as their mummy that I'd really enjoyed it, that it was a beautiful thing to make a baby. I didn't fill it with just, I didn't let them leave that conversation thinking that was the end of the conversation, or I'm not talking with you about it again, or I'm embarrassed, or this is shameful, or this is bad, or this is wrong, or this is something you mustn't mention. I was like, yeah, mum and dad did this thing together, and a baby was made. And I explained about where the sperm came from and where the egg came from and how they came together. I was then slightly shocked a few years later when the baby who was in the tummy, because he wasn't part of that conversation, years later when he was asked about how babies are made, he said that the mummy lays an egg on a rock and the daddy comes along with a sperm hammer. So that's my example of what happens when you don't have the conversations. They create these myths, they create stories which are nothing to do with reality, and whilst they're really cute, they don't really equip them for adulthood. So my two eldest toddlers, they learned about sex when they were really young. And then I continued in that vein. So myself and their dad, and now my partner, we've created very consciously a home in which it's safe to ask questions, where it's safe to be curious, it's safe to continue to learn and to grow and to investigate and explore. Very early on, soon after this How a Baby's Made conversations in the bath, my husband and I were talking about how we wanted to keep our kids away from having to go to the internet to learn questions they didn't want to bring to us. Because we were beginning, we were learning how to do this. So I reflected back that I'd learned about sex from the Joy of Sex book written in the 70s. So we went and ordered a copy. It was awesome. We put it on a shelf quite low down. The children accessed it. I know for sure that one of the three children definitely learned about anal sex from the pictures in the book. Now that might fill you with horror. You might go, oh, that's terrible for a young child to learn about anal sex, but it wasn't. He learned from beautiful pictures, a kind, loving act happening between two people, and then we've had conversations about it since. So my kids know, for example, that whilst anal sex can be part of the sexual experience, that it's not, that the anus isn't designed in the same way as the vagina is, that you have to treat it very differently, it has to be done very carefully, and we've had conversations. So my daughter is not going to experience anal sex as her first sexual experience like so many young girls do these days. So what I keep coming back to, you might find the information, you might find the openness, you might find my candour with my children shocking and maybe slightly alarming, and there's probably even parts of you that are saying this is inappropriate. And I always come back to, what's inappropriate? Having the information and being equipped and being armed and understanding your body, understanding your pleasure, understanding your right to say yes and your right to say no? Or is it better to just go out there completely ill-equipped with this energy that's going to surge through your body and lead you into some really dangerous situations? I constantly say to people, we don't let people get in cars and start driving around the roads without them having to learn how to drive that car and pass a test. And yet we let them loose on each other and themselves with an energy that's quite often as powerful as a Ferrari, frankly. Like, you know, this is powerful stuff you're dealing with here. And if you don't equip them, you're making them super vulnerable. So my number one thing in how to talk to your kids about sex is to create an environment which is open, which is safe, where people can bring questions. They won't be judged, they're not going to be shamed, they're not going to be shut down. You're not going to refuse ever to answer anything. I always remember a few years ago being told by mother very proudly that her son, he was 8 or something at the time, had asked her what sex was. Mummy, what's sex? I've heard about this word sex at school. What is it? She locked him in the bathroom. She barricaded him into the bathroom until he stopped asking the question. Like, seriously. How is he ever going to trust her ever again? How is he ever going to bring a problem to her? How is he ever going to learn anything about himself? Because she's just said to him, I'm not having this conversation. And she shamed him and shut him away, rejected him, abandoned him. Like punishment for asking a question. Don't be like that. Be kind. Be open. Welcome the questions. The questions are beautiful because if there's a question, you know that you're not going into inappropriate territory because they're asking the question. Always be guided by their questions. Allow their questions. Smile at their questions. Say, yes, thank you. Thank you for your question. I'm going to try and answer it. And if I can't answer it, I'm going to go to one of these books. Get books. Get educated. Like, there are some really amazing quality books out there. Get them. Inform yourself. Model. So we know as parents that our kids learn more from what we do and what we demonstrate to them through our actions than what we tell them. Like, if we're constantly telling our kids to have beautiful table manners and eat with their mouths closed and not talk while they're eating, and yet we do the opposite, they're actually not going to listen. They're not going to learn the table manners. They're not going to learn table manners from what we tell them. They're going to learn from what we model to them. The same with anything. So if you shame sex, if you put sex into a box and you only let it come out on a Sunday night after the children are asleep and you are quiet and it's sort of whisper, 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 hush, hush, and sex is in a box and you never ever go near that box in front of the children, they're going to learn that sex is something that's very separate, very shut away, something a little bit naughty, dangerous, dark. If, on the other hand, you allow your sexual energy to just be expressed in the home. Now, I'm not talking about having penetrative sex on the kitchen table in front of the kids. Of course I'm not. What I'm talking about is allowing your neck to be kissed and turning round and feeling arms around you, kind of having a little bit of a sway in the kitchen, being intimate, being loving, and allowing your energy to flow through your body, allowing your sexual energy to be experienced at the kitchen table while you're talking with your kids. It changes the atmosphere. It creates that safe, open, loving, kind environment that makes your children feel safe and feel open and feel like that their experiences are welcome and they can come to you and bring anything to the table. Stay engaged with them the whole way through, like from a very young age, when they start asking questions about sex, when they bring you, this notion like, Mummy, I saw a picture of somebody having sex through the bottom or whatever. Allow that conversation. Don't shut it down. Don't say it's dirty. Don't say it's dangerous and disgusting. Talk about it. And check yourself. If you are concerned and if you've got some prejudice against anal sex, check that. Go and educate yourself. Learn about it. Learn about the pleasure that's to be experienced in the anus. Learn about it. Educate. Stay curious. And always stay engaged with where they're at. Most importantly, I think if you are going to create an open, loving, kind, accepting, open-minded home where all these questions and this conversation can happen and flow, you really want to stay away from rules. You want to stay away from the don'ts. You want to stay away from the judgment. You want to stay away from the shaming. The minute you start bringing in the don'ts and the rigidity and the shutting down and the shaming and the judgment of your children and their sexuality, they're going to go and do it on the secret. They'll do it on the sly. You want them to be safe. You want them to be guided by you. You want to help them learn about their pleasure and about the mutual respect that's involved in sexuality. And you're not going to do that by denying what's going to happen. You're not going to do that by pretending they're never going to grow up and they're never going to have sex, because you know damn well they're going to. So face reality, deal with your own stuff, and create this happy, vibrant, alive, real home where sex isn't compartmentalised and pushed aside under the table, under the sofa, sinful, shameful, covered in dust. Sex is something that exists amongst us. It's an energy, it's a vibrancy, it's an aliveness, it's a connection, it's an opportunity to experience and show and share love. Be that home, create that home. And if you want some more tips, if you want some help, if you want to work with me so that you can deal with any shaming that you've got, if anything I've said has resonated with you and made you think, oh my goodness, I need to deal with this, contact me. So website www. Did I say too many W's? 3 W's.camillaconstance.com, and also available on Facebook, Camilla Constance. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Bye.